Welcome to the Banned Book Club's presentation of Digital Information Preservation in Scientific Research Institutions. Presented by Ken Axford, Juliana Beaumont, Margarita Daly, Rebecca Mortellaro, and your faithful narrator at present, Andrew Woods. We begin with an introduction to the question, what is information preservation in the context of scientific research, and what are its challenges? Digital preservation is defined as a system of data management practices and procedures whose objective is to ensure the continued integrity and accessibility of data, metadata, and digital objects. Preservation is a process of continuous upkeep and adaptation. It entails the ongoing appraisal and selective retention of new and old materials. It is the art of data stewardship, whose aim is to ensure the lasting integrity of data. To be sustainable, data preservation systems must be flexible enough to adapt to meet the challenges of ever-changing technological standards and workflow demands. The end goal of digital preservation is to preserve data for reuse and to retain the accompanying metadata that develops around it. At minimum, to ensure against data loss and to facilitate the reuse of data, all systems of preservation should keep data stored in a secure location, keep it backed up and stored across multiple locations, and should be formatted in a way that is universally accessible to all relevant parties. More than being a stable repository, though, all systems of digital data preservation should be capable of surmounting any challenges that may risk disrupting the continued access to accurately rendered and authenticated content. Scientific research data is defined as data that is produced by or used within the process of scientific research. This includes observational scientific studies, but also other scholarly materials, analysis, metadata, or any digital objects that are involved in the activity of scientific research. Scientific research data is open data, meaning it is meant to be openly available, shared, and analyzed as part of a collective process for the verification of scientific claims. The worldwide body of scientific researchers consists of an expansive and complex network of research institutions and individuals, all working together in a collaborative scientific dialogue and creating an immensity of data which must be organized and preserved. Some examples of scientific research are the worldwide scientific race to cure cancer, research on the phenomena of global warming, the collective effort to map the human genome, a Millennium Project studying global challenges to humanity, and most recently, the collaborative development of the COVID-19 vaccine. The purpose of digital data preservation within the field of scientific research is to facilitate the continuous development of the research process, and to connect the communal research activities of the diffuse research parties by integrating their collective work through preserving it in a stable and universally accessible digital repository, where it can then be reused and its context and the developing dialogue surrounding it can be preserved. The generation and verification of scientific claims is a process which builds up from upon itself, and it requires a continuous and unbroken process of development to become real knowledge. If data is lost, then the chain is broken, the process is disrupted, and the upbuilding of scientific knowledge ceases to be possible. An effective system of data preservation is an essential part of the foundation that underlies successful scientific research. There are several challenges to the preservation of scientific research data. For example, natural disasters and human conflicts. Technological issues like hardware limitations, implementing software, and formatting standards. Lack of proper system management and professional data stewardship. Institutional failure, dissolution of research stakeholders, and loss of funding. Political interference and partisan control of data. Security and cybersecurity, as well as privacy issues. And facilitating for research collaboration.
Hey there, this is Julie speaking. I'm going to talk a little bit about how all of this relates to the information lifecycle. From the time it is generated to the time it reaches a state of disuse or non-existence, any given piece of information will go through the 10 steps of the information lifecycle. creation, recording, reproduction, dissemination, bibliographic control, organization by disciplines, diffusion, utilization, preservation, and discarding. It can be argued that all of the steps in the cycle are involved with information preservation. In fact, the 9th step of the life cycle is named preservation, although a clear distinction needs to be made between this step and the definition of information preservation as a whole. The preservation step of the information life cycle involves the retention of the information's entity, content, and context. This is just a component of the larger concept of information preservation, which is broader in scope and involves the systems and procedures in place to effectively retain necessary information. Now, we will briefly discuss how each of the steps in the information lifecycle is applicable to information preservation and scientific research facilities. Creation. Before information can be preserved, it must first be created. In the context of scientific research, the organization creating the information typically handles its preservation. For example, a researcher in the psychology department at a university administers a questionnaire to students in order to gather data about how sleep habits may correlate with stress levels. Gathering this data would be just a preliminary step, and the university would take on the responsibility of preserving this information and the work that is created from it. Recording. Recording involves putting information that is created into a format that will allow for eventual dissemination. Organizations hoping to preserve scientific research data need to take some things into consideration during the recording stage, such as recording the information in a format that is secure, sustainable, and that will allow the information to be accessed in the future. This is especially applicable to digital data. Information in this format can easily be lost as technology fails or becomes obsolete. It is ideal to back up digital data and store it in multiple places to ensure its accessibility. Scientific research institutions should do this with any new information they create and also go back and do so with any data that may not have been previously backed up. Reproduction. Once the data has been recorded, it can then be copied as many times as necessary to ready it for dissemination. For analog data, such as a print journal, the information is recorded once and then copied over and over. With data in digital format, reproduction is a less important step in the information life cycle, as dissemination can occur almost instantaneously when data is recorded and reproduced digitally. Preservation becomes easier as information is reproduced. It is not the end of the world if one copy gets lost or damaged. Dissemination is the act of distributing information to a larger audience. This can involve getting physical copies into the hands of individuals, such as the mailing of a print copy of a scientific journal to its subscribers. With physical information, the copies are disseminated to multiple locations, which can assist with preservation. If the facility of origin were to experience a flood or fire, the information still exists somewhere. With digital information, this dissemination process is much faster. Were the same scientific journal to have an online format, recording, reproduction, and dissemination can occur almost instantaneously. Again, the backing up of digital information is important in order to decrease the chances of loss. Bibliographic control. Pieces of information must be organized into some larger system in order to ensure that users will be able to access the information when needed. For example, subscription databases and library catalogs can organize thousands of pieces of information by assigning subject headings and keywords to each information entity. By incorporating information into an organized system, its preservation becomes easier as it has clear access points and is less likely to be lost in the ether. Organization by discipline. Many disciplines have a specific way of organizing information that goes beyond generic subject headings and keywords. An example would be PubMed's medical subject headings, or MESH, discussed earlier this semester. Thousands of information items are organized in a tree structure with 16 overarching topics breaking down into more and more specific subtopics. Organizing information by discipline can aid the preservation process because any given discipline is categorizing its information in a way that best fits that specific organization or profession, which makes for easier access. Diffusion occurs when an information professional acts as an intermediary in helping users make sense of information that is presented to them. Ensuring that information can be understood certainly assists in preservation. Information with little context or that can't be easily comprehended is of little use to anyone. Utilization. Individuals apply information to real-world situations and problems. A recent example is the research, development, and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. Through utilization, information is often shared with an even wider audience, and there may be tangible artifacts that result from the use of this information, i.e., a physical vaccine. The more widespread a piece of knowledge is, the more likely it is to be preserved. Preservation is the retaining of information for individuals to access in the future. Again, while this is a key goal of information preservation as a larger concept, it is just one part of the process. And finally, discarding. When information becomes obsolete, damaged, or not useful, it may be removed from a collection. According to Rowland and Bodden, a challenge in the preservation of information arises during the discarding phase of the information life cycle. At what point should information be discarded? Who gets to decide what to discard? The various institutions housing scientific research data need to develop a procedure for discarding information when needed, and the procedures should address the previously mentioned questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Ken Axford, and in these next few slides I'll be discussing the role that information preservation plays in scientific research institutions. The most important thing to remember here is that scientific research is an ongoing, cumulative effort in which new questions and hypotheses are grounded in the findings of previous experiments. Data preservation allows scientific researchers to build on and critically examine the work of their predecessors. A few examples of how they might do this. They might gather new data to verify the results of a prior study, or they might evaluate the results of their own experiments by comparing them to data from earlier research. Regardless of the specific circumstances, the acquisition of any new scientific knowledge depends on the research that came before it. If scientific data is not properly cataloged and stored in a secure environment, data loss can compromise scientific progress and force researchers to spend valuable time and resources repeating past experiments. For an analogy, we might think of historical data as the connective tissue that binds separate pieces of research into a coherent body of scientific knowledge. The preservation of historical data is especially important in longitudinal studies, where researchers attempt to track trends over time. Now we'll look at a few examples of this type of research. We have climate research, where scientists investigate long-term changes in atmospheric conditions and weather patterns. Public health research, where scientists are measuring variables such as life expectancy and disease mortality rates over time. Geologic activity research, scientists might track volcanism and the shifting of Earth's tectonic plates. And this applies in what we might think of as the soft sciences as well. Here we have an example from social science research, where scientists might study shifting societal attitudes towards concepts such as race and gender. In addition to allowing for continuity over time, scientific data preservation also helps to facilitate collaboration between researchers. The internet has made this more important than ever. Today, scientists from around the globe are working together to find solutions to complex problems, like climate change and infectious disease transmission. Information preservation makes it possible for researchers to share data with one another and increase our collective understanding of scientific phenomena. The digitization of scientific data has, in many ways, made it easier for researchers to collaborate and maintain shared access to historical data. There are, however, specific challenges associated with preserving digital data that we will examine further in subsequent slides.
My name is Rebecca Mortellero, and I'll be discussing the major issues for modern information professionals. The economics of consumerism surpass modern measures of actual need. High levels of consumption is arguably achieved by increased disposability. As noted by Funnel 2014, consumption of information is considered key to economic growth, as well as national and international prosperity and advancement. There are serious implications for information scientists who work in archives and record keeping. The concerns for both preservation and access is thus heightened. Emails, documents, and entire websites can be lost or automatically purged on a regular basis due to storage issues as well as simple calculations instead of the examination of importance and meaningful historic worth. Other useful digital information is subject to breaking down, being corrupted, or lost as well. There are even further additional challenges that modern information professionals must be concerned with, such as cybersecurity, digital transformation, cloud computing, and analytics and data management, just to name a few. As discussed by Global Knowledge 2020, cyber attacks are increasing in quantity and sophistication, and many organizations lack IT personnel with cybersecurity expertise. Digital transformation is also starting to outpace training, causing organizations to fall behind with seizing market opportunities, resulting in failed business objectives. Information is ever growing, and there is also difficulty with keeping up with analytics and data management. Cloud platforms are beneficial to capturing, storing, and analyzing data all in one location. However, the additional challenge now is again hiring and retaining qualified analysts and critical thinkers to further cultivate the culture of information efficiently. Furthermore, scientific data must be collected and execution must be initiated by respective scientists in collaboration with people who are trained and skilled in data management. Domain knowledge is required to ensure collections are properly managed, documented, and kept usable for future scientists and researchers. All stakeholders should be actively engaging in data quality assessments to ensure long-term use and usability. As noted by Anderson 2004, proper documentation with metadata generation and maintenance is vital to ensure effective and efficient preservation as well as ease of access. Format-specific issues in archiving born digital information is complex as there are many variations in original file formats, thus one technique will not work for all. Information that's born digitally is vulnerable to loss and decay. Usable data requires accessible technology for search, analysis, and visualization. There are often cases where judgment calls are required to be made about what is worth the time and effort to migrate. Kim et al. 2019 suggested that institutions should develop clear policies and workflow to identify interim steps for potential file migrations to better manage the diversity of born digital specifications. Information security with streaming media and scientific research is another area of concern. As noted by Kim et al. 2019, data information is buried in proprietary formats, commercial databases, and idiosyncratic software which can be very difficult to maintain and access. Paper publications have also increased in cost. There is a wealth of streaming media online with open access. However, there is increasing conflict between fair use expectations in research and scientific data conflict with technologies that enforce digital rights management. Further development of policies to provide incentives that support scientific data archives, as well as policies to enforce and authorize its use, is needed to regulate streaming media online. Anderson 2004 further indicated that practicable solutions include implementing steps such as crafting enabling legislation and defining controlling authorities, supporting policies, regulations, and practices for freedom of information and access authorization, financing and cost recovery policies that support economies of scale, accommodate unfunded mandates, and provide incentives that support scientific data archives, as well as developing and implementing policy enforcement mechanisms. Information preservation affects scientific research users regarding the various barriers that exist, such as vast collections of data in different written languages, the level of data aggregation, and standards for description, use, and storage. Issues of interoperability and compatibility are high when preserving scientific data collections for future access. Issues include concerns about connectivity, electronic network infrastructure, practices, tools, and standards to support language translation, as well as consistent data description and use.
Hi everyone, I'm Margarita and I'm going to be going over the important points for information professionals. Preservation focuses on making sure that your data will be available and usable in the long term. This is important for information professionals who are looking back on previous research and also for other collaborators or other researchers who may want to see data for their future research. Not only do research organizations need to be mindful of the storage of data, they need to cater to the needs of information users. This means having reliable preservation formats that are easily accessible and found in a user-friendly place, such as a single repository. To serve information seekers the data they are looking for, information professionals should be familiar with the different and popular scientific databases available and the different kinds of access points they can use when searching for information. Expert navigation of scientific databases will allow us to teach others how to extract their own data efficiently. Information professionals also need to follow procedures to keep data files for an extended period of time by choosing durable formats, archiving files locally, and submitting data files to a data repository. Preservation is about ensuring access to data over time in a consistent, reliable form. Data loss can happen when documents are deleted, lost, or cyber attacked. Information can be lost in transition when handlers struggle to keep up with excessive information, and time-consuming migration of data interferes with the preservation process. Different collections require objectives with different metadata requirements and come in many different forms. Digital collections are online databases of digital objects. These can contain a variety of formats, such as images, text, audio, or video, and can either be born digital or digitized. In addition, digital collections may have some form of function to search, retrieve, and organize content. When organizing these collections, different characteristics will be used to catalog them. It's important to keep in mind the purpose of the collection and the recorded format to choose the best preservation format for the information item. The key takeaways for our presentation are: the purpose of preserving digital materials is to maintain accessibility and have the ability to access their essential, authentic message or purpose. The greater the importance of digital materials, the greater the need for their preservation, because digital preservation protects investment, reveals potential, and transmits opportunity for discovery to future generations. Already, we have made great strides in averting a digital dark age by preserving so much data. At minimum, all systems of preservation should at least keep data stored in a secure location, keep it backed up and stored across multiple locations, and should strive to make the data universally accessible to anyone interested. The most important objective of preserving scientific research is to have continuous development of the researching process and to connect previous research activities to future causes and research. The importance of having verified data is paramount for our development in all fields of scientific nature. This is especially important for data that has high potential reuse value, has great scientific, historical, and cultural significance, and data that is unique and not easily recreated.
The progression of data becomes achievable when we have a storage of our precious information that can be accessible for future generations. Digital preservation can keep track of long-term studies, for example, in the fields of climate change, public health, geography, and social science. Long-term research is essential to record changes over a prolonged period. It can help identify patterns that may occur over an extensive amount of time, and it allows higher levels of validity. Data collected in long-term studies is unique and may not be available in a shorter-term study. Information preservation makes it possible for researchers to share data with one another and increase our collective understanding of scientific phenomena. It is possible through data preservation for scientists to see results of scientific research all over the world and compare their findings. Without digital preservation in scientific research, it would be difficult to find and connect with other researchers in separate institutions. There are many changes with modern information that professionals must be concerned with, such as cybersecurity, digital transformation, and cloud computing. Cyber attacks are increasing in quantity and sophistication, and many organizations lack IT personnel with cybersecurity expertise. Digital transformation is also starting to outpace training, causing organizations to fall behind with seizing market opportunities, resulting in failed business objectives. Information is ever growing, and there is also difficulty with keeping up with analytics and data management. Format specific issues and archiving born digital information is complex as there are many variations in original file formats. One technique will not work for all. Furthermore, data information is buried in proprietary formats, commercial databases, and idiosyncratic software, which can be very difficult to maintain and access. Usable data requires accessible technology for search, analysis, and visualization. Thank you for watching, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed our presentation on digital information preservation in scientific research institutions, made by the Band Book Club.